The Birdseye Town Council appoints an interim town marshal. My special report on a youth and community center being planned for Spencer County, and sports with Kurt Gooksell. Those stories and much more are up next here on 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. In your news, last night the Birdseye Town Council appointed Benton Stroud as the interim town marshal. Stroud is a former Crawford County corrections officer. He is also a current full-time EMT in Crawford County and works as a part-time EMT in Harrison County as well. He also previously served as the deputy director for Crawford County EMA. Stroud says it means a lot to him to be a town marshal for the town of Birdseye.
It means a lot to me. My great uncle was a town marshal here. My grandpa was a town marshal here, and actually Bob was a cousin. And Bob come to me personally, and it means a lot to me to be part of the town.
Stroud says his family's background in law is what drove him to want to be a town marshal and to law in general.
My grandpa was a town marshal here, and an opportunity came up to work for the sheriff's department. I got into it and loved it ever since. Every time I got a chance to do it, I was in it.
Stroud replaces Robert Jenkins as town marshal. Jenkins passed away last week at the age of 69 after battling through lung cancer. Jenkins had been the town marshal in Birdseye since 1994 and previously worked for the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Jenkins had also served on and off as the deputy town marshal in Birdseye prior to being the town marshal. As mentioned earlier, Stroud was appointed as interim town marshal. Though he is the interim town marshal, Stroud does have all legal powers, including arresting powers. The town of Birdseye will be taking applications for the town marshal position. Resumes will be due by July 16th for the job. The town council will then hold an executive session at 5 p.m. on July 17th to begin evaluation of candidates for the job. Stroud will be a candidate for the permanent position. Yesterday, the Jasper Utility Service Board Water Committee decided to recommend to the Utility Services Board to hire Evansville-based Morley & Associates to conduct a study and investigate as to why the water level at Beaver Lake is lower than it was before the new spillway was built last year. City officials estimate the study to cost between $5,000 and $8,000. Lake residents have complained that the levels of the lake are 9 to 12 inches lower since a $3.3 million spillway project was completed last summer to fulfill a mandate by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, and it took the rest of last year for the lake to refill. During construction, the city was informed that the new spillway would be approximately 1 inch lower than the previous structure. Beaver Lake also serves as the backup water source for the city of Jasper. The Jasper Utility Service Board is expected to take action on the matter at their next scheduled meeting on July 15th at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at Jasper City Hall. Meanwhile, the city of Jasper has promoted Ernie Hinkle as the city's new gas and water utilities superintendent. Hinkle has worked for the city utilities over the last 26 years and most recently was the gas utility distribution foreman. Hinkle was appointed by Mayor Terry Seitz. The Jasper Utility Service Board will vote on it at its special meeting on Monday or its regular meeting on July 15th. Hinkle replaces Mike Adine, who retired at the end of June. The Indiana State Police will be utilizing unmarked pickup trucks provided by INDOT over this holiday weekend to enforce safety and mobility in construction zones across the state. INDOT Southwest District spokeswoman Chair Elliott says this program started several years ago to help the state police reduce injuries and crashes in work zones.
The state police actually began this program a few years ago, and they thought that to effectively monitor traffic through work zones that a pickup would be the best way to go. So they do have several trucks that are unmarked that they put out throughout different construction zones throughout the state of Indiana to monitor and watch for aggressive and speeding drivers in work zones.
There are now 9 trucks patrolling construction zones across the state. ISP and NDOT launched the Pickups in Construction Zones, or PICS program, in 2011 to aid in traffic enforcement in and near construction zones. During the holiday enforcement blitz, Indiana State Police will be specifically looking for drivers who follow too closely, exceed posted speed limits, make unsafe lane changes, drive aggressively, and fail to buckle up or to properly restrain children. Troopers will also be aggressively looking for impaired drivers. Elliott says reducing your speed when nearing a work zone is key.
If you do happen to be approaching a construction zone that is up this weekend, then we do ask you to be sure to reduce your speed, stay on high alert, and avoid distractions as you're traveling through the work zone.
There will be several road closures across the WJTS viewing area over this holiday weekend for various construction projects. These will include State Road 61 in Knox County, which will be closed from Beer House Boulevard in Vincennes to State Road 241 in Monroe City. In Orange County, U.S. Route 150 at Prospect will be restricted to one lane with a traffic signal 1.2 miles to the west of State Road 56 for bridge replacement. Additionally, U.S. Route 150 from Prospect to Paoli will be restricted to one lane with traffic signals in multiple areas between State Road 56 and State Road 37 for roadway reconstruction and bridge replacements. Finally, in Perry County, State Road 66 will be restricted to one lane with traffic signals immediately to the west of State Road 166 for bridge replacement. Motorists can learn about traffic conditions, road closures, construction information, and crashes by going to trafficwise.in.gov or by calling 1-800-261-ROAD. Tonight we bring you another special presentation courtesy of Purdue Extension. We look into high tunnels and their ability to extend the growing season for farmers all across the state.
A typical high tunnel is big enough to walk in. That's why they call them high tunnels and not low tunnels. They are covered with something that lets sunlight in, and they're typically used to grow crops.
It's a greenhouse structure that's not heated actively. It's passive heating through solar radiation.
A typical structure would, like the one you see behind me, have bows spaced anywhere from 4 to 6 feet apart and then be covered with film plastic material that lets the sunlight in.
The difference between a high tunnel and a greenhouse is simply the heating or the lack thereof. In a true greenhouse, you have active heating, whether it be a fuel source like propane or wood.
Typically used to extend the growing season in the spring or the fall and into the winter, so you can get a little longer cropping season.
We decided to put high tunnels on our farm to provide extra income, to diversify our income, and to help keep our son at home on the farm.
Then there are all various types of sizes. They can be different lengths. They can be made out of different materials, and then they can have different ventilation systems. It's in the end walls. You can have some have vents in the roof, so there are different venting mechanisms.
So my thought is that the crop has to be able to pay its rent. It's going to be living within a square foot, give or take a few square feet, and if it's not giving you the output that you need to maintain the operation of that facility, then it's a problem. So it's bell peppers, tomatoes, herbs, lettuce, edible flowers.
High tunnel, we've only grown tomatoes, and we've experimented growing cucumbers and hanging baskets to utilize the total square footage of the high tunnel.
People who've had success seemingly with strawberries and with raspberries, some of the brambles, they seem to be having success. In terms of cool season crops, people are growing things like spinach, lettuce, kale, some of the root crops.
Some of the advantages for high tunnels, again, it comes back to a market window. It allows you to plant maybe even up to a month or 2 months earlier than you normally would be able to plant in the field. Again, if you plant a month or 2 months earlier than you normally would in the field, that means you have tomatoes ready or crops ready available before anybody else would when they're growing in the field, so prices generally will be high.
Less disease pressure with a high tunnel, more controlled environment. You extend your growing seasons by 3 to 6 weeks on either end.
Some people would prefer to spread their work out through the year more and not have to work so much.
Advantages, in my mind, are probably more have to do with lack of experience and understanding of what the environment is like in those structures. You have to have a good understanding of what the climate's like, how you're going to manage those crops. Generally speaking, if you're growing tomatoes and bell peppers and cucumbers, if you want to try to maximize the space, meaning the whole volume of the structure, in my opinion, growing trellising vegetable crops is something of interest, but there's a lot of labor. There's even more labor than associated with high tunnels with some crops than there is even in the field setting.
Farmed all my life, garden, custom baled hay, and we thought when we got into the produce it would be just like farming or gardening, but it's a lot more in depth.
The disadvantages are that managing the environment is important, and it can take time, and it can be a daily necessity. So when it gets hot, the temperature inside the tunnel can increase very quickly to beyond what the plants will tolerate. In the soil, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to rotate that soil to different crops as much as you might like for disease prevention, because oftentimes people will want to put the same high-value crop in the tunnel because that's the thing they can make money on.
If I were to start over again, I would do more pre-planning on the layout where each high tunnel would sit. I would explore my markets better.
Fruit and Vegetable Connection website, under the section called Season Extension, we have some links to resources. There's a series of videos that was done in 2010 by the Great Lakes Vegetable Working Group.
But what I would recommend is seeking out information from a land grant institute, from a state, if you can't find it locally, but from a state that is similar to the conditions which you as the grower will be working.
Who has offers programs from time to time, in the future, so you can keep your eye out for those.
We might be driving down the road, see a high tunnel operation or a greenhouse operation, produce operation. We stop and ask questions. 90% of people, 95% of people are more than happy to offer you information.
An advisor once told me that there's no money in growing vegetables, there's only money in selling vegetables. So unless you have a market already established or some sort of idea of where you want to take your product, I think you need to slow down a bit and focus on that first. And once the market's been developed, or you've at least identified a viable market, then you can start moving forward with the additional processes.
Once again, our video this evening is courtesy of Purdue Extension. Coming up after the break, my special report on a new youth community center being planned for Spencer County, plus your local forecast, sports with Kurt Buchsel, and Inform with Indiana Lieutenant Governor and Ferdinand native Sue Ellspermann. That's all up next here on 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.